Welcome to the Flexible Work Options 101 offered by the Office of Work Life at the University of Kentucky. First of all, I want to say a little bit about the Office of Work Life. The Office of Work Life is an office dedicated to assisting UK employees as they are managing their work and life responsibilities. We do that by providing strategy, support, and services to assist our employees in a variety of ways. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go on. We also do that by implementing an engagement survey every other year. And that survey is designed to collect information from our employees to see how we're doing as a university, to see how engaged the employees are, to see what we can do better to make sure that we are one of the best places to work. And overall, our goal in the Office of Work Life is really to positively impact the productivity and morale of our employees and the university. So thinking about the services offered by the Office of Work Life, we offer a variety of services in our efforts to assist employees as they're managing their work and life responsibilities. We offer counseling services through our Work Plus Life Connections program. We have 4 dedicated mental health clinicians, and these therapists assist our employees with a variety of mental health needs and concerns, including anxiety, depression, work or life challenges, struggles, anything like that. Life circumstances such as divorce or empty nesting or isolation or anything like that. So any mental health related service our therapist can assist with that. And each UK employee and retiree and their family members receive 5 free sessions per fiscal year. And when I say 5 sessions, the employee receives 5 sessions that they can use for their family or for themselves. So for example, the employee might use 2 of their appointment slots, and they might use 3 of their slots for their spouse or for their child. So the employee gets 5 that they can use within their family unit. Our counselors also offer groups presentations on any stress-related self-care topic or title. So that's good to know as well. Also, when you think about the services that we provide in the Office of Work Life, and you think about what impacts a person, an employee, childcare, if you have young children or older children, childcare and parenting are some resources that might impact you as well. So another thing to think about as far as our resources is elder care. We have an elder care consultant that offers consultations and resources related to elder care and caring for aging loved ones. That includes a newsletter that goes out monthly. We have several lunch and learns per semester, and lunch and learns, we cover topics related to caring for an aging loved one, such as elder law concerns, nutrition, housing, support, things like that. We also host a virtual dementia tour once or twice a year, and a senior caregiving conference, as well as a support group for caregivers. Thinking about going back a little bit to the child care parenting, within that, as far as what our services offer, we have a Big Blue Family Care Program, which is a partnership where we partner with UK students to offer child care for our employees. This is a program where we recruit the students, we do a background check with them, and they become a part of our referral service. And as a part of our referral service, the employees can fill out a form on our website indicating they want a nanny or a child care provider for short periods of time, like after school or nights or weekends, and we match them. And so that's how that works. We also offer summer camp fair annually. We oversee the lactation spaces on our campus, as well as share guidelines with supervisors and employees about lactation. And we have a little CATS guide, which is dedicated to expectant parents. And it's a guide that we're currently revising. And we also have a working parents network, which is wonderful for parents, grandparents, foster parents, step parents, any type of parent basically is invited to be a part of this network. We have monthly meetings, we have different gatherings. And of course, currently right now, we're doing all of that virtually. And we have a Facebook group that you can join and get support and tips and suggestions from other parents. So looking at our final service that we offer is our flexible work arrangements and consultation. And that's what we're going to spend the rest of our time talking about today. The different types of flexible work arrangements. There's the adjusted hours, the seasonal reduced hours, the remote work, compressed week, and then of course, reducing your hours on a more permanent basis. So when you think about the benefits of flexible work arrangement, someone may say, why are we even having this conversation? What does this have to do with helping me as I am trying to manage my work and my life responsibilities? When you think about flexible work arrangements, sometimes that really can be the key to assisting an employee as they are managing their work and their life responsibilities. So that's why we talk about flexible work arrangements, because if you are a person that's juggling, say, for example, doctor's appointments or after school activities or middle of the day school activities or elder care concerns or just your own health, you may need some flexible options to make sure that you can manage it all in a healthy way. So let's talk about the flexible work options. We have full-time options and we have part-time or reduced hours options. When you think about the full-time options, that is the first one to think about is the adjusted hours. When you talk about adjusted hours, you're basically talking about working the same amount of hours, but adjusting your schedule, like your usual work schedule. So for example, if you work 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, when you adjust your hours, let's say you have an appointment at 10 o'clock and it goes to, or you're out from 10 to 12 because of a doctor's appointment, you can make up those 2 hours within that same day or a different day that week. So that's what we mean by adjusting your hours. You're pretty much flexing. You're working the same number of hours as you normally would in that particular week, but you just adjust when you work. So because you have that appointment, for example, you may choose to start working at 7 or stay until 6 or 7 at night to adjust for those hours. Or you may make up those couple of hours over a couple of days or 3 days. So that is something you would definitely talk to your supervisor about. And as a supervisor, you can work with your employees to say, okay, you have these different things going on, or your child has an activity at school in the middle of the day, and absolutely you can go. But let's figure out how you're gonna pick up those hours someplace else. So for example, early, late arrival, and again, adjusting for activities. Remote work is another full-time option. That's a flex work option. So when we talk about remote work, we're talking about partially or full-time working from home or someplace other than a traditional work office. So remote work can be partial. For example, someone may work remotely 1 day a week, 2, 3, 4 days a week, or they may be a 100% remote worker, where they work from their home 100% of the time. Compressed work week is another option where you are still working your normal amount of hours, but you're packing it into less than 5 days. So it could be 4 days, it could be 4.5 days. It's just basically less than a usual 5-day schedule. And you're going to pack your hours. And you could be doing that because, again, flexible work is a good help for managing work and life responsibilities. So if you have something going on, say, a Wednesday, first half of the day, an activity, doctor's appointment, something like that, you may say, well, let me just adjust my hours or compress this week to still get the hours I need, but not in my traditional 5-day span. Also, the part-time and reduced hours options, reduced seasonal hours, which we're going to talk more about. The part-time, that's just traditionally just really part-time. And then the phased return from leave, that could be FML related leave. It could be because of childbirth. It could be because of health concern. But you may be phasing back. So normally maybe you work 40 hours a week, but when you first initially return, you might choose to work 30 hours a week. You know, that's phasing back into work. So then phase retirement and then reducing your hours on a more permanent basis. So let's start off with reduced seasonal hours. When you talk about reduced seasonal hours, we are currently in our reduced seasonal hours time frame, and currently our reduced seasonal hours will go until December the 31st of this year, 2020. And here's the two options to think about when you talk about reducing your hours. The first one is the unpaid week off work. That's where you take 1 full week off, 5 days, and you just take it unpaid. Now, of course, that'll be something that you will talk to benefits about to find out exactly what does that mean for your paycheck. And if you're okay with that, then there you go. A lot of people actually take advantage of this week off unpaid option, especially if they're a new hire. This works really well for new hires that maybe have been here for a year or even 2 years or 6 months or something like that. And they have not accrued a lot of vacation time yet. And so they're thinking, gosh, I want to take this family vacation week off or take a week off for some reason. And I just don't have enough time accrued so far. Maybe you have 3 or 4 days, or maybe they do have 5 days, but they don't want to use those 5 days because they want to use them someplace else or at a later date. And so during this reduced seasonal hours, this is the only time that you can take off and take an unpaid week and also have vacation time in the bank, like accrued vacation time. Any other time you have to use your accrued vacation time. You cannot go unpaid. So that's a distinguishing thing to think about. And so again, it works really well for new hires or just someone that's just trying to save their time. But you do also have to have already completed your 90-day orientation period to be considered for this. And then also reduce hours. So that's where you go no less than 0.75. So if you currently work, again, 40 hours a week, maybe you reduce to 30 hours a week or 35 hours a week, something like that. And that is where you will, again, look at the impact on your paycheck and make sure you're okay with that. You can talk to the benefits office about that, and they'll tell you exactly what that will be before you make that decision. And so that's good to know, those two options, unpaid week, 1 full week, and you have to do a full week. We get that question a lot. You can't do just 2 days or 3 days. We do ask that you do a full week. And then also the reduced hours, just reducing your hours. And then the criteria, again, you have to be a regular employee, full-time employee. You could be hourly or salaried. That part does not matter. But you do have to have already completed the new hire orientation time frame. One thing we always like to also make sure is super clear to supervisors and employees is that the Office of Work Life does not deny or approve the request for any flex work. So if you are considering flex work options, whether it be remote work, compressed week, adjusted hours, reduced seasonal hours, the Office of Work Life does not approve or deny these requests. That is approved by your immediate supervisor and sometimes your supervisor. So we are happy to talk about the fact that the university is very supportive of flex work options and that we encourage supervisors to work with their employees to offer flex work options, but we don't approve them or deny them in our office. So continue to talk about reduced seasonal hours. It can truly be a win-win option. So the employee may just say, I need a little bit of breathing time. I need to pull back a little bit, or I would love to be off every Monday in the summer. So therefore I want to kind of cut my hours a little bit. And and their department agrees with that. And they get a break. They get that Monday off or that Wednesday off, whatever day they pick. They get to work their hours so that they've agreed upon, and then their department saves money because the departments base their fiscal year budget on having all employees at their regular pay for the whole year. So that is sort of an extra benefit for the department. They get to save a little money when you reduce your hours or you take a week off unpaid, and that wasn't a part of their budget plan, so they save a little bit. And of course, for the employee, you get to manage your life. You get to flex and do whatever you may need to do. And so with the reduced seasonal hours, a reminder to supervisors that it's their responsibility to review and respond to the email that will come to them. So when a person applies for reduced seasonal hours or any of the flex work options, we do have the form on our website. on the WorkLife website that we ask everyone to complete this form. And once you go to complete this form on our website, you will see the different options. It's going to ask, you know, what type of flex work are you seeking? And you can put remote or reduced seasonal hours or compressed or what have you. You will, on the form, identify which type you're going for. And once you've completed that form, you will submit your supervisor's name and email address to that form. Once you hit submit, your supervisor will automatically receive an email. You will receive an email, and the Office of Work Life will receive an email. And the supervisor's email is a little different than yours. There's some extra instructions for the supervisor. It tells them exactly what to do. So for example, it tells them to let the Office of Work Life know if they've approved or denied that request. And it also tells them if it is indeed a reduced seasonal hours request, that they need to contact their business officer or budget officer or payroll clerk, whoever manages sort of their SAP needs and their payroll. They need to contact that person and let that person know that they've approved this, because that person has to go into SAP and make some adjustments to that person's, the individual's position. And so that's very important. But that information, again, is in the email that the supervisors receive once the employee submits the request. And yes, a person can take multiple weeks off unpaid, again, if it's approved by their department. So for example, if you choose to take 1 week off unpaid in June, 1 week off unpaid in July, another week off unpaid in September, that is your choice. If that is going to work for you, and as far as your budget goes, that's okay, and your department is like, okay, that's great, then go for it. Another thing to think about whenever you, of course, take off unpaid, you're not accruing any vacation or TDL in an unpaid status. If you reduce your hours, you are still accruing vacation, but you're just accruing it a little slower. So that's something to think about. So when you talk about remote work agreements, when you go to our online form and you complete that form, you will see additional information when it comes to the remote work agreement, because that's a little different than the other options. So for example, the remote work agreement talks about the duration, the pay and attendance, and the leave. It talks about UK-owned equipment. So we encourage departments, if a person is working remotely, that they have UK equipment that they're utilizing. It talks about liability and confidentiality. You know, for example, maybe don't share information, don't leave your computer open, lock your computer when you're not using it, things like that. Don't share your computer with family members. Don't be careful about if you're accessing private confidential information. Just, it talks about that. And then reimbursement. So as far as if you're working from home remotely, UK does not reimburse you for internet usage or phone usage or anything like that. Workers' comp is listed, so you are covered under workers' comp when you work remotely. There's a few additional details there. For example, you should be working during your work hours, your designated work hours only, and workers' comp covers that. So there's just conversation pieces there. It talks about work assignment, employee evaluation, how you're going to be evaluated, records to keep, childcare. It also tells us that your remote work is not a substitute for childcare or elder care or any type of care. Of course, in this current state, we are making an exception for that. But generally, if you're working remotely, you're supposed to not be using that as a childcare option or an elder care option. And then performance location, this is just where am I working? And then curtailment of the agreement. What we're talking about there is, let's just say you agree to work remotely for the next 6 months or year, and for some reason it's not working out from your end or from your supervisor's end. It could be that the work is not getting done. It could be that you yourself are feeling like you're missing out on things, or you prefer to be back on campus. You can choose to discontinue that remote work option. You have to initiate that with your supervisor to say, I really prefer to come back. And provided they agree, then you can set a date, maybe a month out or 2 weeks out, depending on the pay period that you're on, and make the arrangements and make sure you have everything in place, and then you just basically end it. So we want to make sure people know that that is an option as well. So supervisors and employees, here are some things that are really important to consider when you're thinking about flex work options. First of all, you're going to know what are the options, and we just reviewed that just now. So the flex work options are simply adjusting your hours, working the same number of hours, but adjusting like your normal schedule, flexing your schedule. We have the compressed week where you work more hours in less than 5 days. We also have the reduced seasonal hours, which we're currently in the reduced seasonal hours until December 31st, 2020. And we talked about those two options, and remote work. So first of all, knowing what the options are is important, and figuring out based on your life and what you're trying to do with your work and your life and managing things, which one makes the most sense for you. And here's what we do know. We know that remote work does not work for everyone, and every position is not remote work capable. And we know that some positions are remote work capable temporarily, but maybe not on a permanent basis. We also know that some positions, as far as compressing your week, you're going to have to figure out what day makes the most sense to compress. So for example, if you want to be off every Friday, that may not work for your department. And also flexing your hours. You may say, can I start at 10 o'clock and work till 7 o'clock? Your department might need you there at 8 o'clock, so that may not work. So this is why it's super important to discuss what you're considering and what you want to do with your supervisor. You do all of this prior to submitting an online form, because you want to make sure that you guys are in agreement. And then you submit the form, the supervisor approves the form. If it's a situation where the budget officer needs to be notified, they do that. The budget officer does their part of whatever they need to do in SAP. And then you start, and that's it. And if it's one of those reduced seasonal hours, there's something that the budget officer has to do before you start and after it ends. They have to go back into your individual employee account and make a change, like reverse what they did basically prior to you using that reduced seasonal hours. So that's something to think about. And then also things to note, especially from the supervisor's perspective, you have to think about the job functions. So like I just mentioned, some positions are just not going to be conducive to remote work or not on a permanent basis. And then others will be. There's some that, again, thinking about the function of your job, if you're the front desk person that needs to be there to open the building at 8 o'clock, or to stay, or if your job goes till 6, whatever, you may be wanting to flex and leave at 5, and that may not work because of your job function. So that's something to think about. And then a team impact. You always want to think about, when I make these adjustments, how am I going to make sure that there are no barriers to my success? How am I going to make sure that this is going to work out for the work that I do and not negatively impact my team or my group or my supervisor even? So you just think about that, and you think through it, and you basically put a plan in place to make sure you're successful. And then of course your job performance, a supervisor may, just because your job can be done remotely or in any other flex option, your supervisor still is going to be considering all of these job performance. Do you show up to work on time? Do you do your work that you're supposed to be doing? Do you have the best attitude? Just your overall job performance. And so that might weigh into the decision as well, the approval or denial. And then I just talked about the barriers, thinking about what they are and making sure that you put something in place so that they're not a barrier. Or at least if it is a barrier, make sure you have a plan A, plan B, something like that. Productivity, time, and project management, impact on the communications with your team and supervisor. When you're flexing your hours, you really have to be super intentional about communicating. So, everyone is not going to remember that next Wednesday you're off, or the next 3 Wednesdays you're off because you're compressing your week. So that's where you get to send an email to your team to say, just a reminder or to let you know for the next 3 Wednesdays, I will be off. I'll be happy to help you with anything before and after, you know, and then you may send another reminder Tuesday morning, just a reminder I'm off tomorrow, or walk down the hall and mention it to someone. So just to make sure, again, that you're able to be successful and this does not cause any kind of undue disruption to your team and your productivity. You just be mindful about communicating a lot. And tracking your projects is important. And for your supervisor's sake, sometimes they just want to know, what are you working on, especially if you're working remotely. And then they want to make sure, they want to just know, and that's okay. You just tell them. And then, of course, overall, be responsible. You know, this is a really big time to manage yourself and manage your projects and show that you are responsible and that you are accountable and you can do this. We know you can do this, but you just kind of got to remind yourself, okay, I have to really be on top of it. And then other things to think about, again, I mentioned that the Office of Work Life does not approve or deny the request. That is done by your supervisor and potentially their supervisor or their supervisor even. Sometimes in a college or department, there may be multiple layers of approval. The supervisor does the official approval, but there may be other kind of unofficial approvals that need to occur as well. So, you know, things to consider: determine if you're eligible. We already talked about that. Equipment: what equipment do you have that you need to use to make sure you're successful? Do you know how to, you know, forward your phone, for example, for that one day that you're working remotely? Or do you know how to make calls through Skype? You know, those kinds of things. Do you know how to join meetings via Zoom? You know, just making sure the technology piece is in place and that there's no disruption there. Also, I encourage supervisors, whenever they are a little iffy about trying, especially remote work, and they're like, I don't know, I say, you know, do a trial period. Do like a 90-day trial period. And if that person's working 1 day a week every Wednesday from home, just try it out for 3 months. The reason we say at least 3 months is because you need a little time for it to become a habit and for people to get used to it and to adjust to it, because there is an adjustment period that occurs whenever someone is working remotely or compressing their week, and therefore they're not there ever on Wednesdays, those kinds of things. So the team, everyone needs time to adjust to that. So if you go less than that 90 days, which technically you can, but it sometimes puts you in a position where you haven't really had an adequate amount of time to adjust to the change to see if it really is going to work. So there's that. And then, of course, you don't always have to say why you want to flex your hours. You may just say you want to, and, you know, can I take advantage of it? And I say that because it may be something that's personal to you that you don't feel comfortable sharing, or you may say it's a personal situation. You know, you don't have to get into all the super details. So what if your request is denied? Great question. If your request is denied, I encourage you to talk to your supervisor. That's why you have the conversation before you submit the form. That's the first thing. But if you've submitted the form and you get a denial and you've already talked to them, you may just want to have a conversation. It could be that something has changed since you had that conversation, or it could be something about the request needs to be edited. It may not be an outright denial. It may be that particular day is not going to work, or I didn't think about what have you. So just have that conversation. And of course, make sure your business officer knows about your arrangements, because that's very important. All right, there's a few things to think about when it comes to pay and benefit tips. I mentioned earlier that is really important, especially if you're using the reduced seasonal hours option, where you're going to be cutting your pay, whether it be a full week off or just lessening your work hours. You want to talk to the benefits to make sure you understand how that's going to impact your premiums and your pay and health credits and all of those things. So you basically just give them a call and then have that conversation with them, and they will be more than happy to assist you. We also, one quick tip as far as pay and benefits, and this is also a compensation tip. We do request that you do not request an unpaid leave the day prior to and after a holiday. So for example, Memorial Day is coming up. You would not want to request your unpaid week the week of Memorial Day, because of course you don't get 4 days there, but also you don't get paid for that Memorial Day when you do that. So whenever you are taking an unpaid leave status, you can reduce your hours, But whenever you are an unpaid leave status, you don't want to do that around a holiday. Now you might opt to still do it because of some plans you have and you really have to take those dates. That's the only dates you can take. But we just want you to understand, if you do that and it wraps around a holiday, that you won't get paid for that holiday. So that's just something to note. Also, with the business officer piece, that is so very important when you're talking about reduced seasonal hours. The other flex options, the business officer doesn't have anything to do with it. But when you talk about your reduced seasonal hours where you're actually changing your pay, the business officer is really critical. Or it may, in your department, it may be a payroll clerk or whomever the person is that makes the payroll happen. Is very important that that person knows with ample notice. We recommend at least 2 weeks. A month is fabulous, but at least 2 weeks notice that I'm going to be off for a full week in 3 weeks. So that they have enough time to do what they need to do in SAP with your employee records to make the change. And then of course they have to change it back when you return. So give them as much notice as possible is encouraged. Also, you don't know their schedule. You don't know if they have a planned vacation day or something like that. You don't want to get caught up in that. So just let them know so that they have ample time to make the changes. Here's a few tips for working from home. When you're working remotely, it's very easy to not have a good routine or schedule. It's very easy not to be as organized as you would be if you were working from an office space someplace or from campus where you have a regular routine. So we highly encourage you, in terms of making sure you're successful when you're working remotely, is to make sure you try to create some organization around the work that you do, whether it be have a space where you work or have an office or desk, or have some organization there. Make sure you have the supplies that you need. Again, sticking to the routine. If you normally work 8 to 5 or 7:30 to 5 or whatever your schedule is, 8 to 4:30, make sure you stick to that schedule. Make sure you get up, get dressed, get ready, and you're ready to work at that time, and you stop when you're supposed to stop. It's very easy for people to work extra when they're working from home and really don't think about it. And then also, if you are a non-exempt employee paid biweekly, non-exempt, you count your hours. So it's that much more critical for you to make sure that you're not working overtime and then asking for overtime pay, or just working extra and your supervisor's going, why are you working extra? And then if you are an exempt employee where you're getting paid monthly and you don't count your hours per se, you're expected to work your 40 plus hours. You also don't want to get caught up where you're working 60 hours, from home, because you're at home and you're just sitting there and it's now 7 o'clock and you probably should have stopped a few hours ago. So that we just encourage that. And of course, integrating your family rhythms into your routine, whether that is just making sure that if your family members are around, or just if they are in and out or what have you, just making sure you consider what's happening in your household, as well as and how that's going to potentially impact you trying to work from home. Don't expect to be able to do it all just because you're there and you can just keep working. You also think about, you have to prioritize your tasks and your projects and just work on that, and not going to get everything done in 1 day or 2 days even. Establish expectations with your manager. So basically talk about, here's the projects and tasks I'm working on. Here's when I'm going to have this completed. If you're running behind on a deadline, then just say, I'm going to need more time because I had to stop to work on some other things that came up. Just kind of keeping them abreast of what's going on. And of course, it's really important to do that when you're working remotely, because it's not like you're across the hall or down the hall or what have you, and they can see you're working on different things, or you can pop in and say, I'm working on different things, or they're in meetings with you, those kinds of things. When you're working remotely and it's just you, they don't necessarily know. So if you're not explaining that I was working on this, but I ended up getting called to work on this, or I had a problem with this, or it took me an extra hour or two to do this, just communicating can be really, really important. Celebrate your accomplishments together. If you finish and complete a project or something, or even help someone, just saying something, acknowledging that. That's important for supervisors also. When you have remote workers, so let's just say you're not remote, or just acknowledging, keeping up with their accomplishments so you can acknowledge it. And then evaluate and adjust and monitor. That's just the entire time. You're going to think about what's working, what's not working, and do something for yourself. So that means simple things like taking stretch breaks, taking a walk, eating nutritious meals, eating periods, not just working through lunch, and reading something if you want to take a reading break, or, like maybe one of your 15-minute breaks, you just pause and you just read something or do a puzzle or a color or something. So just kind of take care of yourself, thinking about that is really important because it's just you. So be mindful. Stay healthy, take care of yourself, be a role model for other colleagues. Basically, this can work perspective. And then thinking about the Office of Work Life, this is just a slide that talks about our email and our website, our phone number, and the different members on our team. We have our work life assistant, elder care specialist, and then our 4 therapists. And that consists of our Office of Work Life. And we are more than happy to assist you with any projects that you need, or if you need us to come, if you're a supervisor and you want us to talk to your departments or your teams, if you're an individual and you just need some help talking through flex work options, we are more than happy to assist you with that.